Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Gawo. I'm the librarian at the Syrian Cultural Foundation's Sharbel Library. It's my honor to participate in today's Nebu Circle lecture. Before I present our guest speaker for today, I'd like to provide you with some background regarding the purpose behind organizing this lecture series. In ancient Assyria, Nebu, the Lord of Wisdom, was revered by scholars, fostering a deep love for knowledge. Supported by rulers like Ashurbanipal, a grand library in Nineveh elevated learning, leading to centers like the School of Nisibis. Despite challenges, Assyrians maintained their love of learning, reflected today in the Nebu Circle lectures by the Assyrian Cultural Foundation. Today we are happy to have Father Sharbel Iskandar Bcheiry as our speaker. Father Sharbel's topic for today's lecture is the establishment of the Syriac Orthodox Maphrianate of Takrit in the 7th century and the reaction of the Assyrian Church of the East. Father Sharbel, Metadata Editor at Atla, earned a Ph.D. in Church History from the Pontifical Oriental Institute in Rome and a Ph.D. in World Christianity and Global Missions, Christian and Muslim Studies from the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. He authored An Early Christian Reaction to Islam, Yeshuab III and the Muslim Arabs in 2019, and Hagiography, History, and Manuscript Culture, Studies in Syriac Christianity in 2018. He has published on Syriac Christianity, cataloged manuscripts, and is mapping Syriac settlements. Father Sharbel is also a Syriac Orthodox priest serving the St. Ephraim Syriac Orthodox Church in Chicago since 18 years ago. Today's lecture will explore the profound political and military developments in Mesopotamia and its surrounding regions during the 7th century AD, followed by significant social, religious, and cultural changes that impacted the lives of local populations. This lecture aims to shed light on some of these changes, the reorganization of Syriac Orthodox presence in the Sassanian territories within a church institution known as Maphrianate, whose center was in the town of Takrit. In addition, it highlights the reaction of the Church of the East, led by Catholicos Yeshuab III, to the non-Chalcedonian reorganization. Before we start the lecture, I want to remind everyone that we must leave this meeting room by 8:30 p.m. in accordance with the Lincolnwood Public Library's meeting room policy. Also, at this time, please put your phones on silent. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Now I'd like to invite ACF's history instructor, Mr. Robert De Caleta, to say a few words about today's lecture. So please join me in welcoming Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. All welcome. Father, we're really honored to see you again. I've known you for many years, have a tremendous amount of respect for you, for your knowledge, your understanding, your compassion, for your parishioners, your people. And so this is a very special moment. When we talk about Takrit, many of us think of Saddam Hussein. This was his hometown. We don't usually associate Takrit with either the Church of the East or the Syriac Orthodox Church. So this is a great learning experience for us. And we should keep in mind that these are human organizations. Human beings come together, they form a church. Although it involves the divine, nevertheless, it's a human organization. So to see them interact is really interesting. So we're really looking forward to this, to the drama, to the conflict, to the agreements. All yours, Father.
Thank you. Thank you. Brichramsho Shlomo Kulkhun Taudi Sagi Mesithkhun. وتودي ساجي الشوتو فوثو مردونو ثويتو أوثورويتو طيباث كنشيو Diomono. Thank you. I would like to express my gratitude to the library that hosting us, this beautiful library, to the Assyrian Cultural Foundation sponsoring this event and sponsoring very interesting series of lecture, the Nabu series lecture. And very thank you to Sarah Gawo, Rabbi Robert Decleta, and Hawa Isho for facilitating and bringing this event together. Especially that the Assyrian Cultural Foundation and its programs, which they are fascinating, and we learn from them. For example, the classes about the Assyrian history and heritage, they shed light on that part of our heritage. Because at the end, the Assyrian history, the Assyrian heritage is part of our history. When we think about that land, it comes to our mind also Bartulli, Bahzani, Ba'ashiqa, Baghdad, and Takrit. And about Takrit, today the topic will focus. If we do a simple Google search about Takrit, primarily, the information will be that Takrit is the birthplace of Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi leader, or the birthplace of Salah ad-Din, the founder of the Ayyubide dynasty, or Takrit, a Sunni Muslim city in the middle of Iraq. Very few people know that Takrit was a stronghold of Christianity in Iraq and the East. And it was the seat of an important ecclesiastic institution called Maphrianate, that also we will focus the lecture about it. And the Takritians, around the 11th century, not in the period that we'll focus today, just to give you an idea about the Takritian in Anatolia, when the Turk around the 11th century invaded Anatolia and they captured 12,000 Christians. Then a man named Abu Salim Takriti, Syriac Orthodox Christian, came to the ruler and he offered 1 denarii golden for every captive person, and he liberated all 12,000. The Takriti were well known with their wealth. Who repurchased the monastery of St. Mary, the famous monastery of Deir Surian in Egypt? The Takritian. At the time, Marutha, the Takrit, the treasurer, a very important treasurer, rich man in the Umayyad dynasty. Usually the Syriac chronicles, they describe, yes, the Takritian as arrogant because of their wealth, their influence in the church affairs, but they used to be known also for their education. For example, we have Yahya ibn Adi, the famous philosopher from Takrit, or Ra'it al-Takriti, another philosopher who also engaged and influenced the Islamic philosophy, also from Takrit. Among the few people that we'd like to mention, maybe the Patriarch Kyriakos of Takrit. Takrit had a special place in the history of Christianity in Iraq, and this is the goal of our gathering tonight, to shed light on that city. But in the context of the 7th century, in the context of the relationship between the Church of the East, the major church in the Persian Empire, the Sassanian, the first part of the 7th century, and the Syriac Orthodox Church. And the theater of that interaction will be Takrit, how they dealt with each other, how they saw each other, how each community leader planned, strategized, and saw the other, and especially under the early Muslim rule. This is enigma. This is everybody interested about. When Islam came to Iraq, those very first years, how the Christian reacted with them. Usually, our sources present the view in a little bit static way, or black and white. They were good or they were bad. But for example, the famous correspondence of Yeshuab III, the patriarch of the Church of the East, we can learn the dynamic, in very dynamic, fluid. He gave us a very fluid picture of what was going there. And we'll use his correspondence to know more about Takrit and the Syriac Orthodox Church and the foundation and the role and the importance of the Maphrianate. But first, I would like to clarify a challenge, which is not easy: the use of terminology. I will try to be fair as much as possible. For example, it's easy for me to say the Syriac Orthodox Church. But if we will go to the 5th, 6th century, even the Syriac Orthodox people will say, who are the Syriac Orthodox? Maybe they will call themselves Mshihoye, Christian, Mhaimne, Orthodoxoye, from Antioch. But this terminology, the Syriac Orthodox Church, is more recent, at least started maybe by the 8th, 9th century. Also, if really I want to be fair, I should use the Assyrian Church of the East. Why I'm still using the Church of the East? Because for me, naturally, it is something a little bit new. It was adopted by the Church of the East in 1968, I think, means it is relatively new. Another challenge is the use of miaphysite, monophysite, diophysite, which were only coined just recently. And maybe some people, they don't know what is miaphysite, and they are not even Syriac word. Or I'll try to use anti-Chalcedonian, Chalcedonian, anti-Ephesus. It's really a struggle. Sometimes, maybe it will skip from my mouth the word Jacobite, Nestorian, but not because a malicious intention. It is the habit, and they used to call themselves like that. Though, 100%, those two terminology, Nestorian, Jacobite, are incorrect, not correct. The Church of the East is not a Nestorian church. Actually, Nestor, he didn't live in the Church of the East. He died outside the Church of the East. The Church of the East adapted the teaching, the theology, the interpretation of Antioch. But Nestor doesn't have anything to do with the Church of the East. And Jacob Baradeus is one of the Syriac Orthodox fathers. He didn't found it, he activated. Those two terminology, they are not correct. But unfortunately, from time to time, it will skip from my mouth, but you will understand why I'm using those. And sometimes I'll try to even avoid those. Now, the best things to start is always with map, the geography. A very, means we will use always east-west, east-west. What is east and what is west? Why we say the Church of the East means east on geography. Where's the border between east and west? East is the Sassanian Persian Empire, east of the Roman Persian limes, the border. And plus minus, this is the border. The border can be changed. But in general, this was the border between the Byzantine and the Persian during the 6th, 7th century. East and the west within the Roman Empire. But still, we are in Mesopotamia, Syria. But this is why we say east and west. Now let me bring it a little bit more closer. This is the West under the Byzantine dominion, and this is the East under Persian Sassanian dominion, and this is the border. This red, it's my own correction, because the border should be a little bit run like that. There is a canyon, this is the Tigris River, runs like that, then there is canyon, and the Persian garrison will be stationed here. This the maximum they can reach, where you can find the monastery of Moraugin. Here, then the high of the mountain of Isla. This is Tor Abdin under Roman dominion, connected by the rest of the Roman territory through Al-Sor, Mardin, that area. This is the east, west, this is the east. Now, sometimes some scholar or some people, they will extend the east, not based on political division, but on geographical division, by considering everything east of the Euphrates River belong to the east. But this is not really what we mean, East Syriac, West Syriac, the Church of the East, or the Syriac Orthodox Church, because the border is here. Why some scholars, they do that? It's Edessa, Roha, Edessa. Edessa is the cradle, it's the center of the Syriac literature. And it's nice to including it there by considering the geographical division, the Euphrates River. But it is this one here. Now, still we are, here it is the Byzantine Roman territory, but still in Mesopotamia. If you notice, Euphrates River here. But we have Mesopotamia under the Persian, but also there is the Byzantine, the Roman Mesopotamia, divided both. This is just to give you an idea about the geographical context of our talk. Now, returning to the Church of the East, by the early 4th century, around 325, we can see a kind of organized ecclesiastic body with a center in the east, centered in the capital, which is naturally Seleucid Ctesiphon, but still in connection with the West. For example, Papai, one of the Papai or Papai the Catholicos, when we had a problem, when the other bishops of Erbil and other places, they didn't like his emphasis on his leadership, supremacy, they appealed to the West. There was a problem, they deposed him, he appealed to the West father interfered, and they put him again. Means there was kind of relationship. But little by little, the Church of the East started to emphasize its independence. Why? Because the Persian, when the Roman converted to Christianity, the Christian in the Persian Empire, they were considered by the Persian as suspicious people, the followers of Rome. In order to keep a distance from the Roman, the Church of the East, through the Synod, Maria Balaha or Dad Yeshua, for example, 424, emphasized its independency, that we don't have nothing to do with the West. With the Christological explosion in the middle of the 5th century, with Ephesus, with Chalcedonia, with the different way of interpreting the nature and identity of a Christ, the Christian world was divided. Those who supported Nestorius, or they supported the teaching of the school of Antioch, they were persecuted by the Roman, and the only place to escape the authority is to go to the neighboring country. Because of that, many students, many teachers who came, many of them from the Persian Empire, they returned back to their homeland. And among them, Barsauma of Nisibis, who played a big role, because Barsauma was appointed Metropolitan of Nisibi a city on the border, but at the same time, he was appointed a governor of the border. He had two functions, and he made sure to establish the teaching of the Christology of Antioch in the Church of the East by encouraging people who believe in that thought assigned to the episcopal see. And the Persian, the Sassanian, they like that. Means it's better, or they thought maybe people supported by the Byzantine, maybe they will, means the Byzantine, they will infiltrate. Means it's better to assign this party. This is a general view. Did the entire Church of the East converted or became Diophysite? No. A minority remained. And here I would like to show where not everybody accepted the Diophytism. For example, from the letters of Shamoun Bet Arsham, a very active anti-Chalcedonian, Miaphysite, between two brackets, Syriac Orthodox, who was very active in the Sassanian territory. Through his letters, he will mention the names of bishops, priests, deacons, community opposing the formal Christological teaching of the Church of the East. And here I highlighted in red where those people were found. We can see in Hira, Ardashir, Fayruz Shabur, which is Fallujah nowadays, Takrit, especially Takrit, Garmai, little bit in Arbil, more in Nineveh, some in Dahuk, and in Sinjar, and Arzun. We can find opposition community, not so much organized. After the death of Shamoun Arshmoyo came Jacob Baradeo, Mor Yaqub Bardu'ona. At that time, the Syriac Orthodox was experiencing a crisis, and he reactivated the church. And he ordained many bishops in the West, then he moved to the East. And he ordained Ahodema as metropolitan, great metropolitan for this minority in the Church of the East. Probably Ahodema was Diophysite, between two brackets Nestorian, bishop of Nineveh, who left his church and joined the other party. He was ordained by Ahodema as great metropolitan. The aim is to create parallel to the Catholicosate, so that one day pull the things from the hand of the Catholicosate by presenting another parallel structure of church. And the situation remained like that till the beginning of the 7th century. Now, in the 7th century, something big happened. The Persian invaded the Roman territory. Before the Persian, they will invade, they will conquer Dara, Amid, a city, a castle, a countryside. But in 604, a large scale of invasion. And the Persian army under two generals, Shahrbaraz and Shahin, they conquered Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and they arrived even to Constantinople. The goal of Khosra, the second, the king, is to conquer the entire Byzantine Empire. What happened here regarding the Syriac Orthodox and the Church of the East? For many reasons, we'll talk about them. But since the Persian conquested this area, there was demographic changing. Before, the majority of the Christian in the Persian Empire, they belonged to the Church of the East. But when the Persian army added Syria, Anatolia, and Egypt, the balance shifted. Now we have more Miaphysites joining the Persian Empire than the Church of the East. We see favorism, support from the Persian to the Syriac Orthodox. And the Patriarch, the Syriac Patriarch, especially the Syriac Orthodox at that time, they were persecuted by the Byzantine. When the Persian conquested this area, they expulsed all the Chalcedonian bishops, and they brought bishops from Iran, from Persia, from Mesopotamia, and they assigned them on the episcopal see in Upper Mesopotamia and Syria. The Patriarch at that time, the Syriac Orthodox Patriarch, Athanasius, took advantage of that situation, and he tried to reorganize the monophysite world. First, after 40 years, kind of separation or problem with the monophysite, Miaphysite Copt in Egypt, there was a problem between the Syriac Orthodox in Antioch and even the Copt in Egypt for 40 years. There was no relationship. The Syriac Orthodox Patriarch, he reorganized the relationship, and he reunites both churches, Syria and Egypt. Then he directs his intention toward the east to reorganize the Syriac Orthodox in the Persian territory. And among those who played big role was Marutha of Takrit. This is all just to give you a background how and why Takrit was established. Marutha, the first Maphrian, was born in Beth Nuhadra, in a village. His parents, they were the leader of their village. Then he became a monk in a monastery. Then he left to Syria, to Arraqqa, where he lived for 20 years as a monk. Then he returned back to Persia, to the monastery of Mormatai near Mosul, and from there he went where? To the capital of the Sassanian Empire, Seleucia. At that time, two people were supporting the Syriac Orthodox. Shireen, the wife of King Khosrow, and the famous doctor, Gabriel from Sinjar. Shireen most probably was Miaphysite. And Gabriel of Sinjar originally belonged to the Church of the East. But he switched. He became Syriac Orthodox, between two brackets. Why? We don't know. The Church of the East sources tells us that he wanted to marry more than one woman. The Patriarch didn't allow him. And then he reacted by joining the Syriac Orthodox Church. This is what the church sources. And he had very special a place by Khosrow II. Why? Because Shireen, the king's wife, was barren. She couldn't give a birth. And the doctor, he was physician, he helped her, and she was able, as a doctor, she was able to give a son to the king. And since then, Gabriel of Sinjar had very special place. And both, they made all the efforts to support the Syriac Orthodox in the Persian Empire and organizing them. Shireen built a special church for the Syriac Orthodox near the palace, the royal palace. Gabriel supported a monastery, And we see in that period Miaphysite monks like Marutha going to the capital, kind of lobbying inside the capital in favor of the Syriac Orthodox. Where was the patriarch of the Church of the East? They didn't have. Around 604, for some reason, the king didn't want this candidate. He wanted another candidate. They didn't listen to him. They ordained that one, and that patriarch died. Khosroy, with the encouragement of Gabriel, didn't allow the Church of the East to ordain another Catholicos. They didn't have head. Means from one side, we have Miaphysite monks working in the capital. We have the leader of the Miaphysite church, the Metropolitan Samuel, living in the capital, and the Church of the East were not allowed to have a patriarch. Means it seems that really Khosroy II not just favored the Miaphysite in Syria or Palestine, but also maybe he had the intention to replace the leadership of the Assyrian Church, Church of the East, with the Syriac Orthodox Church. Then the Byzantine made the counterattack, and Khosroy fell, and things changed in the capital. Ardashir, his son, took maybe for 4, 5, 6 months, 1 year, the politics changed. Now, the Syriac were persecuted. They were expulsed from the capital. Marutha left the capital. He went to Fallujah, Firshabur, which is maybe 3, 4 miles from Fallujah. And he lived for a certain time there. And in that circumstances, the patriarch of Antioch called Marutha to go to Syria, and he ordained him metropolitan, not Maphrian. Maphrian, it's recent. Then in the 10th century, they started to use the word Maphrian. Ordained him as great metropolitan. He reorganized the church, Syriac church in the East, because he knew now the Church of the East is starting to reactivate. Immediately the Church of the East ordained a patriarch, Yeshuab II, and they took the action and they start to put a pressure on the Syriac Orthodox in the capital, which caused means the intention of the creating the Maphrianate is to, there are many reasons. First of all, what are the sources? What happened 629, the year of the establishment of the Maphrianate? What happened? We have to return back to the sources. We have the life of Marutha, a hagiographical text, authentic, written 2 months after the death of Marutha, narrating his lifetime and give us information about that period and the establishing of the Maphrianate. Then we have another document called the Synod of Mormatai, supposedly occurred in 629, but this is not right, because if we read the document, we see that there is so much anachronistic, means many information that they were written later. They were not genuine document. For example, he says that the head of the monastery of Mormatai was the bishop of the great city of Mosul, when we know Mosul was not even established. It was written later in 912 in relation with different contexts. We'll explain that. We have another archives, documentation preserved in Michael the Syrian Chronicle, but also they are not authentic. And Gregory Bar Hebrios, he based his information on these 2 documents. Now, what was the intention of these 2 documents? Around 800, 900, when Mosul was established and became big city, the monastery of Marmatai didn't like so much the authority of Takrit, and both, they are in the east. There was a struggle, and based on that struggle, those two documents were written. And those documents were written as an attempt to reconstruct the memory of an obscure period, what happened to the Syriac Orthodox Church between those years, 484-629, an explanation of how episcopal authority continued to exist in the East. If the Syriac Orthodox, they didn't have relationship, they were not able to communicate Antioch. How did they have bishops? What's the legitimacy of their bishop? And if we don't know about the legitimacy of a bishop, means it's a big question. You are questioning the sacraments. You are questioning many things. And this documentation trying to explain that. Providing a model of legal relationship between the patriarch and the monastery and Takrit. But the most things interesting through this documentation, which also agree with the life of Marutha. This documentation that talks about the establishment of the Maphrianate, they emphasize two centers, north and south. North concentrated around Nineveh, led by the monastery of Mor Gabriel, and south concentrated around Takrit. We see a very strong emphasis on the centrality, the privilege, the authority of the Bishop of Nineveh, Assyria, and the monastery of Mor Gabriel, of Mor Matai, versus Takrit and Bet Arboye. Takrit in this documentation always associated with the Arab tribes. Marutha associated with the Arab tribes. And we know there were Arab tribes living in and around Takrit. And Marutha had good relationship with them, and even before them, Ahodema. And this documentation, which reflects the point of view of Mor Matai, that they emphasize on Nineveh and Assyria versus Takrit, they always give the answer that Takrit was chosen because Takrit has a special relationship with the Arab tribes. This pattern, very similar, it is interesting, very similar to a pattern that Patricia Kron, in her book Hagirism, talks about the North provincial Assyria versus Saliq. Two centers, north, south. In the Church of the East, there is emphasis between Assyria and Saliq. In the Syriac Orthodox Church, the emphasis is Assyria and Takrit. Now, though this documentation reflects anachronistic privilege for Mor Matai from legal, formal perspective, but there was a tradition. Means the tradition of emphasizing on speciality of Assyria in the north even exists in the Syriac documentation. There is similarity. After establishing the Maphrianate and Takrit, we see the organization of the diocese. There are plus minus 12 dioceses, but probably some of them were added later. It's not necessary at the time they had all those dioceses. Now I would like to move to a point that really I am interested about it. What was the reaction of Yeshuab? The Church of the East, seeing the reorganization of the Church, the Syriac Orthodox Church in Iraq, how they reacted, especially Yeshuab. Yeshuab was a very energetic, zealous bishop. Yeshuab was born to a Persian family. His father was a landlord. He owned land near Erbil. Originally, they are from Erbil. Yeshuab famous, he became the bishop of Nineveh, then he became the metropolitan of Erbil, then he became the patriarch of the Church of the East. Yeshuab wrote many compositions. Among of them, he's famous with letters. He has preserved 106 letters in a Syriac manuscript preserved in the Vatican Library and other copies. Those letters are very important because when we read them, we can extract historical information from them. Between 628 till 659 means when the Roman invaded and then the Persian fell, then the Roman collapsed, and the Arab Muslim invaded. It's a very sensitive period. And he was mentioning a lot of things. And among them, what was going on in Takrit. I will read a little bit from his letter. Oh. Now, yeah, when you will see letter, he has 106 letters, divided in 3 phases of his career. There are letters composed during when he was bishop. Because of that, we put B, means letter number 39. B means when he was bishop. M, when he became metropolitan. C, when he became Catholicos. This is the number of the letter, and circa when it was plus minus written. In the first letter, around the year 638, Bishop Yeshuab of Nineveh, who was still bishop in Nineveh, wrote a letter to the patriarch of the Church of the East, Yeshuab II, reporting on the spiritual and pastoral situation of his diocese, Nineveh. In this letter, Yeshuab describes the unstable and difficult time that he was living in, which corresponds to the ongoing Muslim Arabic conquest and their wars with the Persians and the Romans. Yeshuab refers to the activities of the heretic, what he calls heretic, Jacobite, the Miaphysite Jacobite, who, according to him, had gained a strong presence in Nineveh, chiefly due to the support of the local rulers, the Muslim Arabs. This is we are talking about 7-9 months after the Arab invasion, who were sympathizing with them. However, after the occurrence of a divine miracle, he speaks of a divine miracle. We don't know exactly what he's talking about, but always he says a divine miracle occurred. We'll talk about that. The local governors, according to him, gradually began to turn their backs on the heretics because of their shameful matter. Something happened. And according to him, saying that now the local rulers, the Arab Muslim, they start to be ashamed from those heretics, and they start to not giving them so much support. He says literally, quote, when they, the heretics, who broke from the strength of their illusion because of a blow from the Lord, they went to the barbarian governors, barbaroi, he called them barbaroi. In Syriac, barbaroi, Bedouin, and the Arabs in Syriac literature were called barbarians, who are appointed over us because of our sins. And ever since they, the heretics, threaten me daily with murder. However, I show them that such things is very easy and beneficial for me. I don't care. Yet, it is so frightening for them because they have no hope. If they die, they don't know hope. But, however, as usual, the Spirit of God is miraculously, slowly transforming the hardness of the barbarians to gentleness toward us. They, the barbarian governors, are embarrassed by them, the heretic, as they were embarrassed by what happened in Assyria. What happened in Assyria, in Nineveh? The big miracle. We'll know about that. In a second letter, number 44b, we'll return back to 43, also written around 638, to Metropolitan Gabriel of Beth Garmari. In this letter, Bishop Yeshuab describes in angry and bitter tones the activity of the heretic in Nineveh and its negative influence on his community. This letter was written during the high point of support by local governors toward the Miaphysite Jacobites in Nineveh. Yeshuab explains in detail the dynamic conflict between the heretics and his community in the town, and the role of the local governors who were supporting the heretics. Yeshuab's main point is to explain to Metropolitan Gabriel his intention to visit a certain governor in Takrit. He's telling his bishop, Metropolitan, that, by the way, I'm now going to Takrit, to explain his case against the heretics in Nineveh and to persuade the governor to take his side. There is conflict. There is competition between the Syriac and the Church of the East, the Jacobite and Assyrian, to pull the governors to their side. According to Yeshuab, the Jacobites were active and successful in their propaganda for the following reason. Now I will quote from Yeshuab. The intense madness of the wicked and blasphemous people who are mentioned here came about because of a satanic illusion. They found for themselves an advantageous time for obvious reason. And here is the reason. First, the eagerness of the current governors to hear them, the heretic, who are approaching them with incantations of money and golden persuasions, bribes. The second reason is the multitude of evil assistants, muawinin, assistants, of whom? Of the governors, who in the past belonged to their heresy, the Jacobite, and now are counted among the current rulers. The third is the reception and success of the people of Takrit before the rulers there. Fourth, and additionally, the influence of Satan which functions among the disobedient children of the church, his own church, who do not hold fast to living according to the love of truth. Thus, they went by themselves as they wished and wrestled against the heretic as they desired. However, they were unable to speak a wise word. They did not even present a persuasive plea. They did not show a sign of stewardship to the Lord. They did not accomplish anything worthy of a persuasive conversion with the governors. After they had completed their desire, they, some member of his own church, returned to disturb us. They found out that the governor of this place, the governor, the Muslim governor, is openly supporting them, the heretic. They went down to the dung heap near the gate of our city, Nineveh, since they are the dung of the church. There they made for themselves a house of fullness and stupidity in the name of a church, as a meeting place located near the place where all people usually would have to go for their usual natural purification, defecation, like he's making fun of them. Yeshuab mentions, end of quote, Yeshuab mentions how some of his people, with a great zeal for God and the true faith, some members of the Church of the East, they said, we can't stand that. This heretic coming, going, we have to do something. had a hard time accepting the newly built church of the heretics near the gates of the city. Thus, they planned to attack it and forcefully demolish it, not thinking of the consequences of their actions, which could lead to death. To defend his community and to spare them a vengeful punishment from the governing authority, Yeshuab decided to approach the rulers of his time. He said, don't do nothing. I know how to speak with them. I am going to talk with the governor. Although he was physically ill and psychologically weary, he's describing his state. Yeshuab mentions to Metropolitan Gabriel in his letter that with the help of God, he began traveling toward Takrit, allowing himself to stay over in the middle of the city. He portrayed Takrit as theater of evil and a risky place for him to stay. As I said, I won't go there. Because not only was the ruler he found there, but also many of his Jacobite assistants in Takrit. And they would take a stand against Yeshuab. Takrit played an important role in political administration. The influence of the Jacobite in the town played a supportive role for those in Nineveh. The support of the Jacobites in Nineveh comes from Takrit. And there was a political and administrative tie between Nineveh and Takrit during the early years of the Arab conquest. Furthermore, it is not clear what he meant when he mentioned some people who previously belonged to the Jacobite. What did he mean he belonged to the Jacobite previously? Means now no? Furthermore, but are now counted among the new rulers. Means logically, means they were Jacobite, but now part of the rulers. Means what? Did they leave the Jacobitism? Doesn't make sense. Means religion and politics. Or maybe they joined this new kind of religion, but still they have sentiment toward their Jacobite. Means, is this the yearly conversion? The second reason is the multitude of evil helpers of the governor who in the past belonged to their heresy and now are counted among the current rulers. Does he mean that they previously belonged to the ruling class and system? The reference that they had belonged to their heresy in the past means that during his time there had been a change. This means that in the past they were Jacobite Christian but now belong to the religion of the governors. At-Tabari mentions that during the conquest of Takrit, some of the Arab Christian tribes who were living in and around Takrit made an agreement with the Muslim Arab and supported them in the conquest of the city. Those Christians Arab were from Taghlib, Iyad, and Nimr. These tribes converted to Islam upon the conquest of the city in 637. Perhaps it is to some of these formerly Christian Arab that Yeshuab mentions. Letter 43 to secular leader named Yazdan, probably the son of the famous Yazdin, the tax collector, influential secular member of the Church of the East, his son. Yeshuab sending letter to him. In it, Bishop Yeshuab mentions the difficulties he experienced because of the Jacobite. He asked Yazdan to take a tougher position against the heretics and to support the Church of the East as his father had done before him. In this letter, Yeshuab describes once again the politically unstable situation and the turmoil that was occurring in the world. His main distress came from a group of heretical ascetics who dwelt in his region and had a negative influence on the people of his community, especially when the heretic instigated the governors and the leaders of the region against him. Quote, I will narrate all of this in a letter, how they, the heretic, are provoking and troubling the governors and the people of the land against me every day, and how I had to deal with such challenges by visiting or being driven before the rulers. I will write about all of this in a letter so that the knowledge of Yeshuab activity against the heretics, will be spread and made further known. Sometimes he will go by himself to explain himself to the governor, or sometimes they will pull him by force before the governor. Again, Yeshuab emphasizes the support of the governors and rulers for the heretics and the necessity to explaining his case to them. Letter 46b. An example of how Yeshuab tried to persuade the ruling authority is letter 46. This letter was written around 638 to an influential man who was a bishop or abbot, maybe bishop, maybe abbot, and had received a political function or role from the new Arab authority, and so had a connection to the governor of all. Shalit Utkul. Is it the caliph? Is it? Bishop Yeshuab sought his help in releasing a leader who had been helping the Christian in the region of Nineveh when they had experienced difficult times, supporting their monastery and churches. It appears that this leader had been taken away by the governing authority, probably as a prisoner of war. Bishop Yeshuab thus sought the help of someone with connection to the authority on this leader's behalf. This is just to show how Yeshuab was active in politics. Regarding this one, quoting his writing, regarding this one, this request, I beseech you, for the sake of the poor people that I was called to serve, that because of these people, you may write to the ruling authority and the governor of all. The Arab, this is the earliest mention of Arab political action in Iraq, in Persia. And so had a the ruling authority and the governor of all, that he would return this man to us. You can help us with your power if you decide to do so. Your request on your behalf will not be stopped. And through us, your help will be extended to all the people in our region. And he go so. Letter 48 was written 638. In a letter written around 638 to the children of faithful people and truly Christians from Yeshua, Sania, Babusa, Hanan Yeshua, Ashaq, Barsahda, and Dadyazad, these people he's writing to them. Bishop Yeshuab, the servant of the Church of God of the people of Nineveh, again describes the difficulty and chaos of his time in eschatological terms. He mentions that the heretics, this is about 10 years after the reorganization of the Syriac Orthodox Church in Iraq. This is the fruit of the action of Takrit. This is the fruit of the action of Marutha, but from the point of view of Yeshuab. He mentions that the heretics who were residing in the mountain of Al-Faf, Mormatai, Jabal al-Maqlub. This is one of the mentions of Der Marmatta, the monastery of St. Matthew. Those heretics that they are dwelling in the mountain of Al-Faf, Al-Fai, had come into contact with the faithful people in the fortified town of Beth Babi. Bishop Yeshuab was angry, mainly because the monks did not show zeal in confronting the heretics. The letter mentions that a heretical monk who came down from the mountain of Marmatta, from Al-Faf, was buzzing like an importunate wasp near the corner of the town gate of Beth Babi, where he erected a small church because of his incantations and left. Like a wasp, came and left. The bishop criticized the monks, his monks, because they did not show zeal against the heretical monk and did not remove the shrine he erected near their church. These monks justified the act and did not see anything wrong in it. The bishop emphasized the strong faith of the fourth father and threatened these monks that if they did not show zeal in their faith and their practical action to remove the impure shrine from the door of their church and declare the evil of the one who built it, erected and sanctified it, they would not be able to enter any of the churches anywhere and would not be able to receive Holy Communion. He was angry with his own monks. Why they are not reacting? One monk, like, he came and he went and they didn't do nothing. In this letter, the Arab Mhagroye, Al-Hajariyin Mhagroye, Arab Mhagroye, the very earliest mention clearly, Tayoy Mhagroye, the Muslim. We are talking 1 year before the famous document about the Arabs in Palestine. This is 1 year, 9 months after the Arab conquest. Very early. In this letter, the Arab Mhagroye are mentioned that they were supporting the heretics. The bishop describes the way that the faithful people might explain their cause to the Arab Mhagroye. He told his monks, quote, "And if it happens that you, monks, would give false excuses because they didn't do nothing, what's your excuse? And if it happens that you would give false excuses or that the heretics would deceive you so that you say what happened occurred by the order of the Tayoye, this is entirely untrue. He's saying, don't tell me this was because the Tayoye." Quote, "For the Tayoye Mhagroye do not assist those who say suffering and death came upon God, the Lord of all. And if by chance they did help them, for whatever reason, you can explain to the Mhagroye and persuade them in regard to this matter if really you care about it at all. Do all things wisely, O man, my brothers. Give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. And the Lord of the Most High will do what he does. By his hands all good things for the benefit of those who fear him." Yeshuab was clever. He knew how to persuade the governors into his side. That from his talk, it seems that the Muslim Arab, Tayoye Mhagroye, couldn't stand someone say that God suffered on the cross. And he's saying that, explain that to the Muslim Arab, that this Jacobite, this is what they teach. But we are closer to you from them. We don't believe God crucified on the cross. We have a common ground between us, very early. And there is a very beautiful letter from Yeshuab to Bishop Jacob of Shahrazur, clearly supporting him, encouraging him to attack the Zoroastrian and to take advantage of this new world order. There is no time to mention that. I'm closing. Jumping to the last letter, letter 490b. In a letter written around 638 to Metropolitan Gabriel of Beth Garmai, Bishop Yeshuab reports on the miraculous event that occurred in Nineveh and by which the heretics were defeated. Now we return back to know what was that great miracle. He says, quote, "A short time ago, Father, when we were struggling by fighting the wicked one, we instantly turned the face of our thought toward you, O steady guardian of orthodoxy. Not long after this trouble, but as we were beginning to write a letter, the mercy of the grace of the Lord suddenly hit us with an indescribable miracle, which repelled the turbulence of the impious impious from here. Some of them were expelled to far places, and some of them to the holes of their hiding places. So that we, in astonishment, we, means he continued. Means in short, he's saying that something happened. The Jacobite, they were embarrassed. And the governor, they even embarrassed by them. And the Jacobite, they didn't know where to escape, and they hid themselves inside the holes because of this miracle. It doesn't give so much information about what that miracle that occurred in Nineveh, close to Yeshuab in his time, involving the Arab. And the Arab, after that, according to him, they start to turn back to the Jacobite. Actually, in that period, if you turn back to a hagiographical text, the life of Rabban Hurmuzd, the life of Rabban Hurmuzd, a text written in the 12th century, narrates the life of that monk. That monk who went to Egypt, from Egypt came to Palestine, returned back to Mesopotamia. He went to Al-Qosh, and he built a monastery there. Then, during the time of Yeshuab, then the son of the governor got sick, and there was a challenge between the Church of the East and the Jacobites of Mount St. Matthew in the mountain, who can heal him. They were not able, but according to the story, Rabban Hurmuz, he was able to bring him to life, and it was big shock. And the monks from the monastery of Mormatai, they were embarrassed, and they escaped, and the governor of the city had admiration because Hermes, in the same time, the same location, means I think it's not just Yeshuab talk about that miracle, but we have another source talking about the same. And I would like to conclude here that Yeshuab learned from the mistake of his church. Each one was learning from the mistake of the church. Barsom, the Church of the East, during the Barsom Metropolitan of Nisibis, he had big role in supporting the Theophysitism in the Church of the East, but he made a mistake. He didn't encourage, and he was opposing the monks. And actually, a synod was held. And among the canons, that if someone encourage, he will be in trouble. The Church of the East, at the beginning, in the 5th century, didn't like so much the monasticism, the heretic. Actually, they accused the Jacobite. They are penetrating the territory of the Church of the East through the monastic life and heretic. And for more than 30, 40 years, the Church of the East didn't have a strong monasticism. And this was the weak point that the Jacobite took advantage of, and they penetrated the Church of the East, because at the end, to explain to the people in terms of theology, philosophy, the truth of the faith, means even theologians, sometimes they don't understand for real their own dogma. Means it goes beyond. How can you gain the heart and the mind of the people? Through the life story of saint, the miracle, the popular piety. You create the connection. And Yeshuab, in his letters, always emphasizes that aspect, and he uses with other event, other story that we don't have time, like the life of Sabr Yeshua and others, to create, to encourage, to incite. He employed those story to create that sentiment. And this is part of the fight. Now, the Jacobite, what was the reaction? Yeshuab was saying that this Jacobite saying that Christ, God crucified on the cross, and the Jacobite, Marutha himself, wrote the life of Ahodema. This is the answer. Saying, if we read the life of Ahodema, the message there, the point there, this is the answer of the Jacobite. That yes, true. we say Jesus suffered on the cross, and we are not ashamed. Marutha has to answer because also he has Arabs, Christian in his community. He has to, yes, of course we say Jesus suffered on the cross, but as an act of chivalry. And he embodied that idea in the life of Ahodama. How Ahodama, who was famous with his relationship with the Arabs, because it's the message to the Arab during Marutha's time, they were trying hard to pull him from the martyrdom, Ahodama. But Ahodama was saying, no, leave me alone. Actually, I'm so happy to go to death for the sake of Christ. Means each one using the hagiography, each one using the popular piety, each one using that literature to pull the ground toward him. This is just means an idea how the two churches were reacting toward each other. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.